Okay, well, thank you so much for the invitation to, give a talk on this platform. So, my talk tonight is animated science educational videos as a tool for outreach and vaccination promotion. And I thought I would start with a little bit of introduction on kind of who I am and how I got started on this path. Oh, let me advance the slides. So, hello. So I'm a chemistry professor at Macalester College, and Macalester is a small liberal arts college in St. Paul, Minnesota. And my typical research focuses on catalytic peptides. So peptides are short proteins that catalyze chemical reactions. So here's a couple. So liberal arts colleges, as the audience may be familiar with, have exclusively undergraduate students. So I work with just undergraduates, and there's a big training component to the work that we do, and I really like that. Getting students, giving them their first research experience and training them. What is research all about? Getting them excited about research. And so here's a couple of papers that I've published with the students, Macalester students I work with, studying catalytic peptides and specifically the role of secondary structure and how that affects catalytic activity for beta hairpin peptide catalysts. So this is kind of like, what we normally work on. But I'm going to give you the timeline of when I became a professor because this is going to be relevant. So I started as an assistant professor in 2016. And then in 2017, I had my first child and my second child in 2019. And of course, as you all know, the pandemic started in 2020. And so the reason this is relevant is because this kind of led me to these outreach videos. And so the unique circumstances of the pandemic, obviously it was unique for all of us in different ways, but there was less in-person lab work for most chemistry labs, but for professors that work at primarily undergraduate institutions like Macalester, it really stopped because the students I had trained, it stopped for a period, I should say. The students I had trained to work in lab, just went home to their home states. So it wasn't like, okay, like it paused for a while, but then we figured out how to get people back in lab. Like the students were just like not in Minnesota anymore. So there was a lot less in-person lab work. But then simultaneously, a lot of professors were being encouraged to record their lectures for remote learning, once we had to go virtual, for Zoom teaching, because students, again, if they're going to different states and they're going to have to attend class from different time zones, it'd be easier if the lectures are pre-recorded. And so students could attend them asynchronously. So I started learning video making skills for hybrid teaching, and especially once we started coming back in person, but some people were still remote. And so just a skill set I had never developed before, like how to make videos, how to record videos, I started learning. At the same time, at the beginning of the pandemic, daycares were closed. And then if you think back to that timeline, I had two very young children, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so then my professional and personal lives really merged. So I wasn't doing in-person lab work, didn't have my students to work with. I did have my kids at home. So I kind of wanted something to do to stay professionally active, couldn't be doing my normal experiments with students. And I realized that my kids, my toddler audience, loved chemistry and biochemistry just as much as my Macalester students. So here's a picture of my then 3-year-old what he is playing with is he arranged his toys. These are magnetiles. He arranged his magnetiles into the Y shape of an antibody, and he is playing antibody versus virus. So this is very early in the pandemic. And we explained, well, there's this coronavirus, and like, that's why your daycare is closed and you stay home all the time now. And, we kind of explained some of the science, and he just ate it up. And little kids love to play superheroes versus villains. Like this type of play is very natural to little kids. And so he started playing antibodies versus viruses. And so I realized kids can accept these advanced scientific concepts because they're accepting everything new. Everything that they're learning is new to them. So why not give them these scientific concepts as the things they're learning? And they don't need to play superhero versus villains. They can play immune system versus viruses. So I thought that was really cool to see. And I thought I wanted to give him more advanced scientific content, like the same level stuff that I teach in the college classroom. So that is how I started making animated science videos for very little kids. So I called it, this series of animated videos, Preschool PhD. And I'm not totally sure where the name came from. So kind of the idea was like PhD level concepts for the preschool age crowd, maybe. Or maybe the idea is like science for every level from preschool to PhD. I'm not really sure. I'm not like a YouTube marketer, but, something kind of catchy and fun. And so like the tagline is science explainers for kids of all ages. And again, like I only knew how to make these animated videos because I had learned some of these video making skills for making video lectures for my biochemistry classes at Macalester. So to give you some of the methods of how I started to make these videos, the main program I used is a program called Vyand. And it is expensive, I will say that, but it's a really cool program. Because if you know how to make a PowerPoint slide, I would say it's like about that intuitive. And so shown here is kind of like the workflow of making a scene in a video for Vyand. And so you can see here, like each scene is kind of like making a slide in PowerPoint. And so they have a big library of characters you can choose from, or you can custom make your own characters. They have props you can choose from. They have actions you can make your characters do. You can animate in like motions or movement for your characters to do. And then, so you can like set up the whole scene. It's like a slide in PowerPoint, and like add in the movement. And then underneath you can see the mic recording. So then I could then carefully time, you can add music, you can, record your voice, and you can move it all around very precisely. So that I would say like the learning curve just like was not very steep to learn how to make the videos. So that was just fun. So yeah, it was my pandemic hobby, essentially, was making these animated videos. Other tools I used was biorender.com, Pymol, and then I posted them on YouTube. So so these preschool PhD videos, I ended up making 5 of them, I guess. They're about like 3 to 5 minutes long each. So pretty much aimed for like preschool age kids, explaining the following topics. Soap, there's one on vaccines, but like for really little kids, states of matter, sunscreen, vitamin C. And so here's a couple of screenshots from the one on soap, and which is the most popular one. So yeah, just like explaining how soap works. So yeah, just like again, like I said, like the concept is just like giving kids these kind of like advanced explanations, which you might not otherwise learn about until like a higher level chemistry class, but like, why not give them this content earlier? And so then to continue on so this is my like initial foray into outreach videos. So that was the fall of 2020 when I really started like making and posting those preschool PhD videos. And then in December 2020, that's when the emergency use authorization for the Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 mRNA vaccines was approved. So the first vaccines for COVID were approved. And over winter break 2020, again, making these videos is still kind of like just like a pandemic hobby. So over winter break, I thought, what if I made one of these animated videos more for grownups, not as much for kids, but explaining how the mRNA vaccines work? And initially I was thinking about kind of like, some friends of friends initially who I knew were going to be vaccine hesitant. But I was thinking, I think they just don't know how vaccines work. And I think if they just understood how they worked, I wonder if they would be less vaccine hesitant, right? Like, I feel like there's just like a lack of knowledge in the general public. Like, how does these things even work? And that makes them like more intimidating. And then I also thought of people like my parents who are generally like not early adopters of new technology. So they're kind of like, what is this like mRNA vaccine? I don't know about this new mRNA technology. So I thought, well, what if I could kind of explain like, what does that mean? So that was kind of the idea I had in mind. And so I made this kind of longer video for kind of, like a adult audience. So I thought, since we're not limited by time, I will play the video, and it is 8 minutes long. And now that I'm at the end of this journey, looking back, I would not have made it this long. I would have made it shorter. But again, this just started as a hobby. So why not? I will play the whole thing. So let me go ahead. Ever wondered how the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines work? This video will explain in under 10 minutes. To understand the COVID-19 vaccines and vaccination in general, it's helpful to review some core principles of biology. Our bodies are made of billions of cells. Inside cells, proteins are the biomolecules that are carrying out all of the different tasks that cells need to do to stay alive. A cell knows which proteins to make from its DNA. Your DNA is stored in the nucleus of the cell. When the cell needs to make a protein, it copies part of the instructions in the DNA into messenger RNA, mRNA, which is used by the cell's protein production machines to make the right proteins. mRNAs are temporary instructions. They break down after use. Think of it like a grocery list written on a piece of paper, telling you what you need at the store. It doesn't stick around long after it's been used. Okay, so that's how normal cells work. So what is a virus? It's a small particle that's missing most of the components of a living cell. Most viruses are just DNA or RNA inside a coating of proteins or fats. The viral RNA stores the instructions to make proteins, but the virus can't make them on its own. So that's why viruses need us to replicate. Viruses make their way into healthy human cells and take over. They send the instructions from their RNA or DNA to our protein production machines. And all of a sudden, our cells are making the virus's proteins, which assemble into new virus particles, which go out to infect more cells. As the viruses take over our cells, it makes us feel ill. But our immune system has ways to fight back against viruses. Once the immune system has detected a viral invader, it produces proteins called antibodies that can recognize and neutralize the virus to prevent future attack. In the case of COVID-19, the antibodies recognize the spike protein on the surface of the virus, shown in blue. So that means for most viruses, if you've gotten them once, you will have immunity going forward. If you're exposed to the virus again in the future, you won't get sick because you already have antibodies to prevent the virus from entering your cells and replicating. That's a simplified picture of how the immune system normally works. How does this relate to vaccines?
Well, throughout history, people have wondered if there would be a way to boost your immune system, to give it those antibodies that recognize a virus and stop it from replicating, without having to actually get sick from the virus first. Some viruses are unpleasant, but you recover quickly, like cold viruses. But some viruses like smallpox, measles, and COVID-19 can be deadly, so it's not worth risking getting them. There is a way to train your immune system to make the right virus-fighting antibodies without getting sick first, and that's what a vaccine is. Vaccines boost your immune system so that if you are exposed to a virus, you already have the right antibodies ready to stop the virus from replicating and prevent you from getting sick. Vaccines have been used for over 100 years. Back in the day, the vaccines were weakened versions of the actual virus. This initial form of vaccination was admittedly tricky because the weakened virus given as a vaccine had to be close enough to the actual virus so that the antibodies made by the immune system would work to prevent infection if the person was exposed to the real virus. But the weakened virus vaccine had to be different enough from the real virus so that the vaccine itself would not infect people and make them sick. That was vaccine technology 100 years ago. But today, thanks to decades of biomedical research, we have more options for making safe vaccines. So how does the COVID-19 vaccine work? The first 2 vaccines developed for COVID-19 from the companies Pfizer and Moderna are mRNA vaccines instead of weakened virus vaccines. This is part of the reason they were able to be developed so quickly. Instead of needing time to find the delicate balance between being close enough to the actual virus to produce the right antibodies, but weakened enough to not cause infection, mRNA vaccines are clever because they're not viruses at all. They're just mRNA with the instructions for one part of the virus. And do they work? When our cells encounter the vaccine mRNA, they follow the mRNA instructions and a protein that's a piece of the virus, the spike protein, is made. The good news is that this piece of the virus is enough for our immune system to produce antibodies to recognize the virus. But the spike protein produced by the mRNA is not nearly enough to be infectious on its own, so there's no risk of infection from the vaccine. The Pfizer and Moderna vaccines have been found to be highly effective in preventing illness from COVID-19. And if you remember, mRNA doesn't stick around long after it's been used, so it's very unlikely to have any long-term side effects. mRNA vaccines are an amazing new technology, but it's still good practice to be cautious. Vaccine candidates are tested in tens of thousands of clinical trial volunteers. The COVID-19 mRNA vaccines were found to be highly effective, with common minor side effects such as soreness and tiredness that are to be expected, as your immune system is working hard to produce antibodies after you get the vaccine. A very small number of people have had other side effects. It may be reassuring to know that the safety standards for vaccines are even higher than for other medicines. Getting a vaccine is truly like gaining a superpower. It trains your own immune system to fight viruses and protects you from getting sick. One more note about vaccines. You may hear talk of vaccination rates. Some people call this herd immunity. The idea is that there are some people in any society that cannot get a vaccine for a particular virus. This includes small babies and people with immune disorders. So how can we protect these people that are not able to get a vaccine? Well, if the vast majority of people in a population do get vaccinated, the virus will not be able to spread because it can't travel from person to person, since most people have antibodies. This protects the people that can't get vaccinated. That's why even if you are not particularly worried about getting sick from a certain virus, you can still do a societal good deed if you get vaccinated. So to sum it up, mRNA vaccines are a new type of safe and highly effective vaccine. Getting vaccinated for COVID-19 and other diseases is a way to train and boost your body's natural immune system, and it could save another person's life. Not bad. If you'd like to see more explanations of chemistry and biochemistry topics, check out the Preschool PhD YouTube channel, which has Preschool PhD science explainer videos for kids and more in-depth 10-minute PhD videos for adults.
Okay, so that is the video. And okay. So I posted this just on my social media channel. So like was posted on YouTube, but then I linked to it on Twitter, Facebook. I kind of have a limited social media presence, but I still did start getting feedback anecdotal, but from people saying like, oh, well, I shared it with someone this was when access to vaccination was really limited to like healthcare professionals, but like, oh, I know like a nurse or, someone who works in a dentist's office who is eligible to get vaccinated, but wasn't going to. I shared your video and the video helped this person change their mind and they got the vaccine. So I was just like, oh, wow, that's incredible that this video actually helped persuade someone. That's so cool. So I was pretty excited to start getting some feedback like that. And then I was chatting with a colleague at Macalester, Professor Eric Larson, who's a sociology professor. And we decided to investigate whether such a video as the one I made could actually have a statistically significant effect on vaccination intention, not just anecdotal evidence. So he proposed, why don't we do a randomized controlled trial? And so have a group of people watch the video and ask them about their vaccination intention and compare it to a group of people who didn't watch the video and ask them about their vaccination intention. And again, see if there's a statistically significant impact of watching the video. And so YouTube videos and other social media has really contributed to the spread of misinformation and disinformation, but it also could be really powerful in its use for public health campaigns through the spread of useful information. And a lot of people like myself and other people, other doctors and scientists are spending their time making pro-vaccination videos like I did. And so the question is, are such efforts worthwhile, right? Do they actually impact people's intention to get vaccinated? So that's the question that we wanted to study. And my colleague, Eric, proposed, why don't we go one step further and add one more research question to this? And he said, because it's an animated video and the narrator is not depicted, the video actually is kind of an interesting platform to isolate and test the effects of a single variable related to the messenger, the gender of the narrator's voice. So there's, plenty of research showing that, male professors get higher course evaluations than female professors, but, there's a lot going on there where like appearance is part of it. Like there's a lot of factors and variables. So in this video, it's kind of like isolates just the voice of the narrator. Like, would that make a difference? So he asked, obviously the video I made had a female narrator voice because it was my voice. He asked if I could also make a male narrated version. So I did find someone to do that. Actually, my husband is also a chemistry professor, so I know he would be fine with any, biochemical terms in it. So I asked him to record a male narrated version. And the funny thing about that is, I spent like my whole winter break, like 2 weeks making this video, and I recorded it and I re-recorded it to make sure like everything was exactly right and the emphasis was exactly right. I spent a lot of time making this video. And so I told my husband, like, okay, like, are you sure you're willing to do this? It might take a lot of time, set aside a lot of time for this. He basically read the script out loud like once. And that was the recording we used. It took him like 10 minutes. So I thought, okay, well, if anything, my version is going to do better because so much care went into it. So I thought I had that advantage going. All right, so we had two versions, male narrated and female narrated. And so we recruited 1,600 participants. And to do that, we used Amazon Mechanical Turk, where you can pay people to complete tasks, and in this case, the task was completing our survey, and the participants were paid for their time. And the citation here shows that Amazon Mechanical Turk is well validated for social science research for studies like this. And the participants had informed consent that they were participating in a study, and then they were randomized into one of 4 paths. And so the paths were to watch the video with a female narrator, to watch the video with a male narrator, to just read the text of the video transcript, and they were told like it was a blog post, or the control group, which was nothing. Then they answered question on COVID vaccines, like, did they intend to get vaccinated? And again, this was February 2021. So the COVID vaccines were not yet widely available, and only the mRNA vaccines were approved. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine wasn't even approved yet. And they answered demographic questions. So then, with the help of my social science colleague, Professor Eric Larson, because this is not my area of expertise, we modeled how exposure to each intervention associated with vaccine intention by using partial proportional odds models with the Geologic 2 program in Strata. You can see I'm even struggling with these terms. This is not my area of expertise, but that is the beauty of collaboration. I definitely learned a lot, and in our results are posted in this preprint, and hopefully the paper will be coming out soon. It's under revision, long process to get the finalized version out, but the preprint is already posted. So that's been up for a while, so you can see all the details there. So I will show you some of the results, but just walk through the main results in detail. So again, so you can check out the preprint for like all the details of what we found. But there's one figure that I'd like to really walk you through, and this is the main result. This is our model number 2 in the paper, and this is accounting for the political ideology of the viewer, again, because we did collect demographic information on the participants. And so the main question was, if a COVID-19 vaccine were made available to you this week, would you get it? And so the answer possibilities, you can see in orange and red. Red is definitely yes, orange probably yes. Then they have undecided, probably no, definitely no. And the reading the text was not as interesting. So we're focusing more on the control group versus watching the male narrated video and the female narrated video. And so this is looking pretty promising, and these are statistically significant results. So this is really exciting. So just watching an 8-minute long video, it's actually a little bit less than 8 minutes, so it's not that taxing of a thing, statistically significant, can increase vaccination intention. That is really cool to see. So what you can see here is that compared to the control groups that if you watch the video, the chances of replying definitely yes or probably yes to getting the vaccine goes up. That's great. However, the caveat is this is for participants that are politically moderate or liberal. For participants that were politically conservative, now you can see that when they watched the male narrated video, the same type of trend is seen. So the male narrated video compared to the control group, the chance of being definitely or probably interested in getting the COVID-19 vaccine goes up compared to not watching anything at all. However, for participants that are politically conservative, that identified as politically conservative, if they watched the female narrated video, their response of probably or definitely getting vaccinated went down compared to watching nothing at all. So there was actually a negative impact of watching the female narrated video. So that overall, what we found when you combine the results, I guess I kind of skipped over that figure in my eagerness to get to this figure, is that when you don't pull out the political leanings of the participants, it looks like the female narrated video is not effective, not as effective as the male narrated video, but it's because of the politically conservative participants. And so when you pull out when you kind of tease out what's happening based on the political ideology of the viewers, you can see why it's happening. Of politically moderate and liberal viewers are persuaded by either the male or female narrated video, but politically conservative viewers are not only not persuaded by the female narrated video, but they're actually dissuaded by watching the female narrated video. So it's a little bit discouraging. However, I would say one limitation is we only had one version of the male narrator and one version of the female narrator used, because by the time we got these results, and you might want to, compare a number of female narrators, a number of male narrators to see if there's like particular qualities of the voices involved. So much had changed in the vaccination landscape, more different vaccines that had been approved by then, and vaccines were more widely available. Just like so much had changed by then that it's really hard to like replicate this moment in time. And then just to share a little bit more, these are not pulled apart by political ideology, but in general, the participants rated the quality of instruction by the narrator, of the male and female narrator, equally the same. The knowledge, comfort, and trustworthiness, equally the same, like no statistical significance in the difference. And so, but in general, we're more persuaded by the male narrated video when you put together the results from all viewers of any political persuasion. Okay, so, and let me see if I can go back to model 1 to show. Okay, sorry. Okay. I was just going to show that the male narrated version was kind of more effective overall. But anyways, I think I made that point. All right, so what are the take-home messages of our study? I think the main take-home message is that vaccine educational videos can increase vaccination intention. So that's really cool. If you see a video about vaccination that kind of resonates with you, share it on social media. Send it to family members or friends who you think might be vaccine hesitant, because it very well may persuade them. And we actually, the video I made had viewers reach out and ask, can we translate it into other languages? So viewers reached out and asked, can we translate it into Spanish? So there is a Spanish language version now available that I made with the help of a viewer and a Macalester student. A family member of mine who worked for the Syrian Community Network, a refugee organization, asked, can we make an Arabic language version? And so we made that. So that, I think that's really cool to work with like different groups of people. So that's great. And then another take-home message of the study is that the messenger matters. And this was kind of discussed in this New York Times magazine article. And so I think a lot of people, especially, earlier on when this study first came out, were thinking about like, how do you persuade different groups of people? And so like our study did indicate that, to reach certain demographic groups, the message might have to come from a certain demographic group. And I think that can in the short term for getting vaccines and arms, say, okay, well, play them the male narrated version of the video, right? But in the longer term for women in science, like women play so many key roles in developing these vaccines. So it's a little bit discouraging to just be reminded that women still face so many challenges of being seen as legitimate scientific authorities, or sources of scientific authority, and just, there's still so many barriers, and sources of gender bias that women face, despite, especially in the development of these vaccines, playing really important roles. So there's more work to be done. So just a little bit of reflection. In hindsight, I would have made the video differently. I already mentioned I would have made it shorter had I known that it would have been something I would have wanted to share widely. And then again, the end, there's a few scientific things that I would have done differently, because I think the end bit about like herd immunity and like vaccinated people not spreading COVID, like we now know like is like people who are vaccinated can get and spread COVID. Like we just like thought that might not be true, but now we know like that is true. So like, we just have like a different understanding of the way the vaccines work now, but hindsight is 2020. And then I think like one skill set I don't have is like how to promote the video. So like I made the video. We have evidence that it works in helping people get persuaded to get vaccinated. And so looking back, I'm like, I should have really done more to promote this video and like push it out so people could like watch it. But I'm just not good at that. That's not my skill set. And so, I think maybe like I should have done more to like partner with people to like just like promote it more. So yeah, but I don't know. That's just, I guess this is the reflection slide. So reflecting on that. And then I would like to keep making more of these outreach videos. I think it's like been a really rewarding and interesting path, but it has gotten harder, I would say, as more other parts of work and life have resumed after the initial lockdowns. Like I am back in the lab doing research with Macalester students. And so I'm busier with other things. So kind of the ending thought I would say is this quote from that People magazine article. I guess I should say, I love that these scientists were featured in People magazine. So that's kind of fun to like, why not glamorize scientists? They should be. Just as, famous as movie stars. So one of the quotes from this People magazine article was from Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, or about her, I guess, that even though she played this huge role in developing the vaccines, it was saying her next endeavor is convincing any skeptics that the vaccine is safe. So like combating vaccine hesitancy. It's not my job, she says of her outreach efforts, but it is my duty, right? So it's like kind of like something we all need to get involved in, is because it's just like so important for society. And it is really, it's the next step of just like, it can really help people. And so like it's something we can all get involved with. And again, whether it's like if you just see a video or like even just like a meme that's promoting vaccination and it's funny or it speaks to you in some way and you just share it on social media or you send it to someone, who knows, it could persuade them. And it's something we can all do without too much effort. So I'd like to kind of end here with just the acknowledgements. Of course, my collaborator, Professor Eric Larson. That is the fun of working at a small liberal arts college, is just knowing my colleagues in different disciplines well enough to be able to collaborate with a sociologist has been really cool and really fun. Thanks to our other colleagues who participated in this, helped us out in various ways with this project. And then my students were not directly involved in this research, but these are students I've worked with on my other, traditional chemistry projects over the years. So I, of course, want to thank them. And then thank Ben for inviting me to speak in this platform. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you for a fantastic talk. This is really cool. So we will jump straight into the questions here. So the first one is, you kind of touched on this But do you feel like the video worked? Beyond, you have, and of course, I asked that question, and it was before you showed the study. It's like, all right, well,
Oh
but I'll go
yeah.
ahead and ask it anyway.
Yeah, right. So I think yeah, I think like before we did the study, um before we did the study, like at first, like I was just getting people say like, good job, this is a cool video, like, but people are
Sure.
just being nice to me.
Yeah.
Like, which I appreciate, my friends and family being nice, like, oh, you made a great video.
Yeah.
But then I did start to get like a number of people saying like, I showed this to a friend or a coworker who wasn't going to get vaccinated and then watched your video and decided to get vaccinated. So then that's when I was thinking like, oh, wow, like that is really cool. It feels very fulfilling to actually feel like, this might be having an impact. And so that's when it felt worth doing the study because of the number of participants we had on Amazon Mechanical Turk, because we wanted, I guess I could go back to that slide.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what slide to land on right now. So I'll just go back there. We wanted enough participants to be able to see statistical significance.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually 1,600 people. That's a lot of people. So it's actually like fairly expensive to do this study. But that's what convinced me it's going to be worth it to do this study. We're going to find some interesting results because I was getting enough feedback saying like, I think we might find some statistical significance that people are persuaded by the video. And actually my colleague, Eric Larson, thought there's no way. He thought, why would a video watching a short video convince anyone to get vaccinated? If it was that easy, like there's no way it could be that easy. We're not going to find anything. So he was kind of indulging me at first, like, sure, I'll help you with this little study.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a little bit risky at first, but I thought like I'm getting enough anecdotal feedback that I think there might be something there.
That's very cool. Let's see. The next question is another one. You kind of touched on it, but you can use this to kind of expand beyond that. With the benefit of hindsight, aside from things like shortening the video, is there anything else that you would do, knowing what you know now, to try and make it more effective?
That's a good question. Yeah, there's a couple like little scientific things I would change. Like I mentioned, like I would cut the bit about herd immunity because now we know, like I think with like, now we know vaccinated people can get infected, but they just don't get seriously ill. So I think like earlier on, we just didn't know that. We thought vaccinated people might not get infected. And so like, that's what the video reflects is like that expectation. So what else would I do differently? Yeah, it would make it shorter. I think like looking back at this whole process, I would just, promote it more. And maybe, maybe it's not too late. Like maybe I should just be promoting it more now and like trying to share it. But I don't know, like maybe it is too late. Maybe the people who would have been persuaded by this video have already gotten vaccinated.
That would be interesting to see too, I guess. Like you said, at a certain point, it's far enough in now where the vaccines are readily available. It'd be kind of interesting to see whether that effect that you observed, initially is still true.
Right. Yeah. And we don't know. Yeah. We'd have to do like a follow-up study.
Yeah. That's an interesting thought. Let's see. So you showed the among conservative leaning viewers of the video, having a female narrator was actually a unhelpful thing. But do you think that using, so you mentioned using, multiple narrators, both female and male. Do you think that using like someone who was well known and well liked among conservative viewers, so somebody like Dolly Parton or somebody like that, do you think that you would be able to overcome the dissuasion, or do you think it's a deeper bias that maybe can't really be overcome like that?
That is a super interesting question. That's a great question. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe, right, like just, I mean, this is, I showed this video to my students, and one of them was just like, yeah, it's just like your voice isn't good,
Well, all right.
So maybe that's it, right? But like the liberals and the moderates didn't have a problem with my voice, right?
Yeah.
It was just the conservatives maybe thought my voice wasn't good. And so, yeah, so maybe just like a better female voice.
Okay. I mean, I guess the other thing that would be interesting is, some like a female voice, but like, with different accents even, right? So like,
yeah,
you could imagine like some, generic person, not famous or anything like that, but like with a Southern accent, with a, I don't know, New York accent, California accent, something like that. Like that would be
right.
That would be interesting as well.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
The accent. Yeah. That is a very good point. Yeah, I feel like there's like so many different directions that we could go for follow-up on this research. And kind of, this takes it like a little bit out of my area of expertise. It takes it more into like the social sciences aspect of it, right? But I do think it's fascinating to see, like what type of voice would be appealing to the conservative audience? Like, would it be a celebrity? Would it be a different accent? Would it like a Southern accent? Yeah, I think that'd be really interesting. And especially like Dolly Parton, such an interesting example to bring up because she's such a popular figure and she helped fund the Moderna vaccine research, right?
Yeah.
And she was very public about, like getting vaccinated publicly and like saying a little version of her Jolene song. And actually on this YouTube page, the Preschool PhD YouTube page, I actually had my son sing her version of that Jolene song where she sung the vaccine lyrics.
Yeah.
We just made like a very short video with him singing that just for like another little like a YouTube short. And we've actually posted on TikTok.
That's cool.
Yeah, just like as another little thing. But yeah, so like Dolly Parton's like an interesting example of like super widely respected and like revered figure, very pro-vaccine, but like very popular still. Like, so would she be listened to more?
Yeah. I think your work has really set up some questions. Let's see. So we got a couple more questions here. Do you think the influence of the initial study could be improved or compounded with follow-up videos on things like mask wearing and social distancing, and the roles that those two things play alongside the vaccine?
Yeah, right. I think there's that's a good question. I think there's room for a lot more videos on COVID related topics, on other science related topics. And so kind of I mentioned at the end, like, I would love to make more. Currently, I just like haven't been, like other parts of life caught up with me. But when things settle down, if they ever settle down, I'd like to get back to it. So yeah, I envision myself making more videos at some point.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly what the next topic would be yet, but I guess I kind of think I would stay on vaccines for a while because there's still so much vaccine hesitancy. And maybe like the next video would be boosters, because even for the people who have gotten vaccinated, like there's still so many people who haven't got a booster shot, but it's shown that like it's so protective. Like we need more people to get boosters.
Yeah.
So something on that maybe.
Okay. I think that'd be great. See, and the last question we have here is you kind of touched on this as well. Do you think the effect of this video could be translated to other persuasive videos on other topics?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's a good question. And also, like, I think like it's interesting the question's phrased that way, like other persuasive videos. Like I don't see myself as that's so interesting to phrase it that way. I don't see myself as making persuasive videos or as persuading people, but like I see myself, or I'm interested in making science videos and like providing scientific information, and then hopefully those will persuade people. So I guess like the way I see it, and this slide kind of says that like YouTube videos have contributed to the spread of misinformation. And so my hope is that if we can put good information out there on YouTube, if we can put good scientific information out there, that alone will be enough to persuade people. And so that's kind of my goal. Like, let's put some good information out there. Let's put some good science out there in a way that people can digest and understand. And hopefully that's enough.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. Kind of lay the facts out and say, you know, this is the truth. Do with it what you will. Hopefully, hopefully the right thing to do. Okay.
Right.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That absolutely does. I think that's all the questions that we have. If anybody, you know, I'll start wrapping up. If anybody has any last minute ones, get them in. But thank you again, Leah. That's super interesting talk. Really, a really creative way to tackle this issue, and appreciate you sharing that with us. This is really cool. You've done some really interesting stuff.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a blast, and thank you for everyone for listening. And this was really nice to be able to share this work.
Fantastic. So let me get you to hang around for just 1 second and talk very briefly. And for everybody else, thank you for coming out. Really appreciate it. We will be back not next week, but the week after that, unless we get another talk lined up very quickly. So in the meantime, have a great weekend. Be safe. If you haven't gotten boosted, get boosted. It's a good idea. I know I did a while ago. I'm waiting for the next booster round to come out. I'm not 50 yet, so not quite yet, but soon. And feel free to join the Discord if you would like to. And there's a link in chat for the previous talks on YouTube, so check those out as well. I'm on Twitter at Meekins Lab. Follow Leah's at the Preschool PhD, also on Twitter. And all the links to her YouTube and Twitter and all that will be on the talk when it's uploaded after this. So you'll be able to find it more easily there, and I'll tweet out the recording and everything on Twitter as it uploads. So I think that's everything I've got. Thank you to everybody for coming out, and we'll hopefully see you next time. Good one.